When the street lights came in, and I can't remember exactly when they were, one ended up at the end of our driveway. And my father was so mad because in shift work he'd sleep and it would shine in his bedroom window. So one day he took his gun, he sat on the front veranda, and he shot out the light. He shot the light out.
Explain to me where you were from and then how your family got to Point Claire, and then where kind of specifically.
Okay, well, I was born in Verdun, and my father was in the Air Force. And then they were offered what was called the Veterans Land Act. It was a grant to build or to buy a veterans home. They had some here, they had some, I think, up in the north end of the city. Anyway, he decided to come here. I think it was the opportunity to get out of living in apartments, which everybody did in those days, and to get out in the country. And when we came, it was a barren nothing. I think there was only at that time 35 houses that had been were still being built even. They were still working on them when we came. They called it Windy Hill because there were no trees and it was sort of elevated up, you know. And it was just surrounded by farms. That was the only thing that was there was farms. They never plowed the streets. The whole first year we lived there, in a snowstorm, those streets weren't plowed. The men had to plow through snow up to practically their knees to get down, to go anywhere. It was horrible. Really and truly, it was very difficult in the beginning for them. I remember my mother just crying. She just stood there and she said, "What have you done?" They were all Army, Navy, Air Force. Some of them would never talk about it. They were a very close-knit community, to the fact that after the workmen finished on a lot of these houses, they left behind like construction shacks. And a whole lot of the men got together and they sort of altered them and rebuilt them. And we used it at the time like as a legion. And we'd go there as children and they'd have little parties or show little not movies like you see today, but little movies on something that they had, some projector, you know. And that was the beginning really of a community center up there. All the men had a big garden and they'd all pooled their money and got a rototiller because the clay was so hard to work. You know, he'd grow everything practically. And we'd have to, in the fall, he'd wrap everything in newspaper and put it in boxes down in the basement. There was the Perrier Farm, which is still there beside Lakeside, well, it's not Lakeside Heights Elementary anymore. And he would come with his horse and buggy, and he would sell like milk, eggs, things like that. On Sunday, my father would go up St. John's Road to a farm, and he'd buy a chicken. And the farmer would just cut the head off right there and he'd bring it home. My poor mother would have to pluck it. And that we'd have it, I know, we'd have it for Sunday dinner. It was just ludicrous. And I remember he used to say, "Don't come around the side of the farmhouse." And one day I did, and I saw it. Oh, and I started screaming. And when we went to sit down to eat on Sunday, I told my brother, and of course neither of us would eat. So that didn't go down well at all, that thing. I don't recall, other than, I guess we'd walk down to the village to get other small things, but we had the milkman coming around. And then later on, there was a little general store there, the L&L. And it was La Fève and La Violette, I remember. And that was a big thing that we didn't have to walk down to Point Claire Village to get anything, which we'd have to pull back on a toboggan in the winter, I'm telling you. We had so many good times just playing outside. We were lucky. It was a good era. And everybody looked after everybody. Everybody's father would discipline you. I could remember that. If you did something, you'd get a swat from somebody else's father if he happened to be there. And then when they go home, you know, that you get home and you get another one because they'd have told your parents. You know what I mean? It was a real community, real community. The men themselves, like, they'd have like a softball game, just to pick up. And as children we'd all go, play with the men. And after supper, rush down to start in the outfield and work up. And at the end, they build a big bonfire and we'd put in a potato, because it was a great big thing to put a potato in. And don't ask me how we knew whose black potato it was when it came out, but we all just sat there eating this silly potato, you know.
Yeah, you'd make a big fire and then
They'd throw in a potato, and it was sort of to be a treat at the end of playing the softball and that. And then everybody would take out, well, the men would take out these potatoes.
So it's kind of like now when we play soccer at the leagues and then we have orange slices.
That's right.
You had potatoes.
We had an all burnt potato.